I did what most ex-footballers do, and that's run away. I travelled, I backpacked for a year.
Okay.
I got a world ticket. I don't know if they still exist these days.
I think they do.
I bought a world ticket and literally a backpack. And I youth hosteled my way around South America, North America, and then, did the typical Australian sort of rite of passage and land in London for 6 months.
It seems like everyone.
So cliche, isn't it?
Welcome to The Glass Ceiling, the podcast where business leaders share their stories, struggles and triumphs.
There is a lot in that. There's a lot of learning.
We sort of had different views on how the business should be ran.
The next 10 years looks like for South Australia.
Tough part's the easiest.
I'm your host, Marissa Hankinson from Wavebreaker, and I'm passionate about amplifying their voices. Join me as we explore the highs and lows of innovation, entrepreneurship and leadership. From founders to CEOs, our guests will share their insights, experiences and advice on how to succeed and make a lasting impact. Get ready for inspiring conversations and valuable lessons. Let's shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time.
Welcome to the Glass Ceiling podcast, James. Can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Sure, James Begley. I'm CEO and founder of PickStar and a proud Adelaide born and bred person who's spent many years outside of Adelaide, but, enjoy my time here now.
Great stuff. So how long has it been since you've been back in Adelaide?
Actually moved back to Adelaide in 2016. So like most people from Adelaide, I've spent the majority of my adult working career, or at least the formative part of my adult working career outside of Adelaide, and then have come back to pasture. So my then wife Sarah got pregnant and we thought, well, it's a good chance to come home and raise the kids with family support and, pretty safe lifestyle.
So what was formative career look like?
Yeah, it's had a few chapters.
That's good.
Yeah, I've come from the sport world, so I am one of those washed up hack ex-footballers. But it meant that at the age of 18, effectively, you launched into Melbourne, or I was anyway, playing for St Kilda, and you're sort of learning the craft of living on your own and being independent. So I spent 4 years in Melbourne, and then was fortunate enough to come back and play 3 years for the Adelaide Crows, which was a bit of a dream of mine. I supported the Crows and loved them when I was young. And then, as life twists and turns, I ended up spending about 9 years in Perth.
Okay.
So all in all, there's, 3 states and a few chapters, but feel very privileged and blessed that I had a bit of a patchwork of experience and I'm not just a one town boy.
No. Okay. How many games did you do in total professionally?
61 games in 7 years in the AFL system, which, I think you spend a long time, or especially I did, in feeling like that whole chapter is a failure. I grew up playing with and was drafted with, my teammates went on to play 300 games, win premierships, win awards. And I think you always aspire to that. And so anything short of that, initially you deem a failure.
Okay. So what happened? So you finished your AFL career. What happened then? Did you have to go back and restudy, or did you, what did you do?
I think my mum wanted me to.
Oh, okay.
Or at least, I came out of the system with no degree.
It sounds really think you're like the system. It sounds so like...
It is. It's the army. It's the institution. It's rigid. It's disciplined. You cede your rights to do anything. There's no marriages that come before games. There's no birthday parties. There's no personal, kind of part of your life that supersedes football. So I'll probably refer to it like that subconsciously. Now you put it, but it was like coming out of the army, but no degree and, no real set path.
Okay.
So I did what most ex-footballers do, and that's run away. I travelled, I backpacked for a year.
Okay.
I got a world ticket. I don't know if they still exist these days.
I think they do.
I bought a world ticket and literally a backpack, and I youth hosteled my way around South America, North America, and then, did the typical Australian sort of rite of passage and land in London for 6 months.
It seems like everyone.
So cliche, isn't it?
It is.
But it was great. I loved it. 2000.
Did you ever get to Liverpool? Because that's where I'm from.
I didn't. No.
See, and like everyone just goes to London. And you're like, seriously, there is another city in the UK.
I know. Well, there was London was the hub and spoke to Paris and Spain and Greece, and so there were probably greener pastures in my mind, but not downplaying Liverpool.
It's okay. It's all right. It's still the best football team. It's okay.
It is good.
So you backpacked. So did you do that on your own? Were you a solo traveller?
Solo. Yeah, I finished football in November and I left in mid-Jan, and I arrived in Sao Paulo with not even an accommodation booked. And I remember standing in line of the immigration, getting my passport stamped, and I met someone and I just said to her, where do I stay if I want to stay in a youth hostel? She gave me a few names and that was it. And I remember going 2-3 days not talking to anyone.
Wow.
But it was difficult, magical, beautiful, hard, inspirational.
It must have been a bit of a contrast to go from such a like you've just talked about, disciplined system to then like just being
no structure.
Like that must have been a bit, I'm not quite sure.
Confronting.
Yeah, probably confronting, maybe a little bit overwhelming at
all
times.
Of that. Confronting, overwhelming, dealing with a sense of failure, slightly optimistic about the future, and you're experiencing new cultures, and you sort of got an immediate smorgasbord of, events and things transpiring day to day. So it was a real, it was an incredibly formative year, and I'm so glad I did it because I was not ready to just play my way into a job.
No. Did you work whilst you were traveling?
No.
It was just
gave myself a budget.
Yeah.
Gave myself a lot of money, and I said, this is my year. And, to some degree, I think that helped me establish a really meaningful and purposeful next phase.
Yeah.
Because you have the space and time, firstly, to acknowledge and decompress what's occurred.
Yeah.
And I remember we'd done the 4-day trek for Machu Picchu, and the sun's coming up, and you arrive at the site, the Machu Picchu site. And I just thought, AFL football, the Adelaide Crows, it's meaningless in the scale of our history and the earth, and
gave you perspective,
complete perspective. And I remember that moment. And so, all those, I guess it's stages of probably grief. And it's, as your point, you're probably deinstitutionalizing yourself. And, and I wasn't traveling with anyone. So I was left alone with my own demons and my own thoughts. And I think it took me to the point of getting to Europe and then doing all that and having all the fun that I got to the point of like, you know what, I'm done. I'm ready now. I want my structure back. I want to earn a living. I want to pursue something that's meaningful to me. And I'm ready.
Okay. So what did you do when you come back to Australia then?
Funny enough, you asked that. I put on a suit and tie. So I got back on like a Friday. I think it was the next Tuesday. I put on a shirt and tie, and I had a meeting with myself down King William Road in Adelaide, in Hyde Park.
What, with yourself?
Had a meeting I said, right, this is a meeting with myself. What do I want to do? And I articulated 3 things that I was passionate about, literally just wrote them down. There was some facilitation stuff, there was some media stuff, and then there was some business stuff. And I just write, and then next to each of those categories, I just put, well, who do I call that I know that is linked in with these 3 themes?
Okay.
And that then started the next chapter.
So you basically utilized your network?
Yep.
Okay.
And I realized probably when I was 22, during my time in football, that I love learning and I love absorbing information, but I wasn't disciplined enough and I didn't have enough of a set goal to go to uni and finish it. I didn't have a purpose. So I knew that I had to build my network, and I knew that's probably where my strengths lay. And football is an amazing entree to very successful people who are only willing, to help.
Yes, there is definitely that connection. And I think there is that, people, like you can tell from my accent, and I'm sometimes drawn to people who have moved here from another country, because sometimes there's that, it can be really isolating. You've gone through the same process, you want to be here, you know how hard it can be. So sometimes you just have this common bond.
Camaraderie.
Yeah, and there's probably exactly the same, with police and football, and, there is this bond that ties you.
Yeah, you've got all of that. And also it's a relatively small ecosystem. The AFL and sports world, realistically, is quite insular. And so once you establish a half decent name in that world, you can go in many different directions. And that also includes the people in boards and administration that surround just the talent.
Yeah.
And sometimes you look at it pretty clinically and you go, okay, what have I got? What leverage as a 27-year-old uneducated person? What's the one bit of leverage I have? Well, I know people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it started.
Okay. So what year would this been?
2007.
Okay. All right. So 2007, you're in
Adelaide. Well, I'd just come back. I'd no fixed address because I'd, rented my place out, sold my car, and I'm sleeping on mum's floor, back in the bedroom that I was 10 years earlier. So I was excited. And look, and then I spent 1 year in Melbourne. I was fortunate enough to get a job with a consulting firm that delivered leadership and development, team dynamics style of workshops and programs. And so they got back to me and said, we've got a full-time job, come to Melbourne. And there I go. And then a year later, I got offered a job as general manager of leadership and development at the Fremantle Football Club.
Yeah. So still within that network?
Still football, still delivering, still working sort of in and around that elite sport. And again, I which has probably been a pattern in my life, I tend to lean into the things that I am shit scared about. And apologies for swearing.
It's okay, you're allowed.
Yeah. So the things that I feel really uncomfortable with, I'm drawn to. And I don't say that with bravado. I say that with I feel compelled and I don't understand it. And a lot of the time it annoys me.
Okay.
Because
So is that like the risk thing? You're attracted to the risk?
It must be. There'll be some, Freudian or, kind of early childhood reason of I'm craving validation. Yeah, it's probably pretty true. But what is it about those environments where I feel like I'm going to be really tested that I keep finding myself drawn to? And that was no exception, come in as general manager as 27-ish, 28.
That's a big call.
Yeah, it's a $130 million business. Richard Goyder's on the board. You've got all these important people. And I'm coming in as like leadership, team development person reporting to the CEO. And so, again, completely out of my depth, and I've probably spent 4 years in a really important way, feeling out of my depth, confronting that, learning, building capability. And then you come through that chapter and I was ready to get out of footy and I wanted to consult back to the football club and say, hey, will you be my first client? And I want to build a consultancy.
So you're going out for new business now?
I'm ready for business in Perth.
So definitely like that sink or swim?
Yeah, I think, look, people ask me down the track, they call it entrepreneurship or they'll call it, you're a founder or, you want to run a business. I probably relate it to my fear of being in a bigger machine.
Oh, so you did want to be the cog.
Is greater than my desire to run my own thing.
Right.
So it's more of a reaction to what I don't want to be, leaves you what other options? Well, the only other options is really you got to run your own show, because what else is there if you don't want to work for someone else and be a part of someone else's machine? And that probably was my desire with moving into a consultancy, is I just didn't want to be bound to football again.
So did you start to diversify into other sport, or is it different industries?
Corporates.
Just corporates.
So I worked for the Fremantle Football Club, consulted to them, and then, I began working for Synergy, which was an energy provider, Landcorp, West Australian Footy Commission, so that's sport. I did Dulux, Bendigo Bank, so a range of bigger layered organisations that were, like most places, having frustration and issues and people-related problems in the different, layers of their business. And so then they'll call in an external to go, can you help us sort this out?
Yeah, just that fresh lens.
Yeah, but funnily enough, the whole consulting business started because I sold one 1 hour session for $500 to the Claremont Football Club, where I ran an hour's workshop for their under 13s. That was my first ever sold job. And then I thought, well, I need more than an hour. So I built it out to a 3-hour thing, and I sold the 3 hours initially for $1,000, I think it was.
Give them a bit of a discount.
Well, you don't know your own self-worth and value. And I'm like, I don't know if this is any good. And in the end, over time, then I built out a 3-session package, and then all of a 3-month package. And then, to this point now where I've retained even a couple of clients, which are just great clients. And I've been working with them for 5 years.
Yeah.
But it's not my primary job anymore.
So going back into the leadership and the development, and you worked for a consultancy in Melbourne, is that been a systemized leadership and development program?
Great
or
question.
Is it something that you have developed yourself?
Yeah. Look, I owe my conceptual thinking and I owe my methodologies in principle to their sort of groundwork. They had some really basic and powerful concepts. But what they gave me was the opportunity to practice my craft of facilitation. So what I've learned in the years since, the 15 years since, that the capacity of the facilitator to engage, challenge, support, nurture, make laugh, make cry in a space and time is the power of the content.
Yeah.
I'm not paid, or I wasn't paid back then to deliver content or a system.
No.
Because you can Google that and just go do it. So why is it that teams and systems don't? Ultimately, because they don't reflect and review in an honest and safe way that changes their momentum. Typically, when teams and systems left to their own devices review their own performance, they'll review the things that are safe: systems, process, compliance, resourcing.
That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to grow.
Most of the time, what I've learned, most of the teams will improve because of relationship and attitudinal and honesty principles, not changing a compliance or reporting mechanism. People drive numbers, people drive behavior, people drive, it sounds cliche. I think when I was talking about it, and I guess there's a lot of fashion now in this space, and I probably try and avoid that and keep things really simple. And I think that was part of the appeal when I went out into the consulting world. As I don't have PowerPoint.
No.
It's a whiteboard. It's a group, and I've got a relatively loose agenda, but it's your ability to engage that audience and push them to come right back to your initial question. That is the power of the program, and the content not so much.
So doing that in Perth, going quite well. Did that go national, or did you stay in Perth?
No, I was picking off corporates in Perth, and I think Perth is an isolating place. It's difficult to jump on a plane and
what is it, 5 hours to get there?
Yeah. So that was great, and the mining boom was really peaking 2012 through there. So there was a lot of money washing through the state, and I was sort of developing that client base, and I guess for the first time ever learning the basics of business, financial principles and reporting and profit and loss, and systemizing your own program and how you can scale that. And so I was probably learning some fundamental, principles through that time. And I had an idea, in and around PickStar, sort of 2014, so quite early, but had no idea as to how you jump the chasm between something being an ideation on a bit of paper and money and people and businesses. Yeah. So but the one thing I credit Perth with, though, they've got an incredible appetite for risk.
Yeah.
Boom, bust. When it's on, let's make hundreds of millions of dollars, and when it's off, let's contract 90% and go dormant. And so the people there that I'd surrounded myself with really normalized, I guess, the risk of what if this thing blows up? I think I learned some of that. I don't think I would have learned that in Adelaide if I'd...
No, we're quite conservative in Adelaide.
And I've noticed, and it's definitely shifting, and the whole startup tech world has changed as well. But I'd much rather, there's an amazing Theodore Roosevelt quote, which is about the man in the arena, as opposed to the cold and timid soul that knows neither victory nor defeat. And basically it's that I want to be the person having a go.
Yes.
And I certainly felt, in Adelaide, there was, a rumour mill of who stuffed up, who lost money, who failed. I'm like, that's boring.
We're definitely getting better.
100%.
100%.
This was 10 years, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
When I got back in 2016, people were still talking about the state bank, which I think it collapsed in 91 or something.
I wasn't even here.
Yeah.
So
anyway,
I didn't even know there was a state bank. So
well, yeah. Well, it used to be the tallest building in town.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so that was that the state's definitely evolved over the last 8 years.
Yeah. Okay, so you come to Adelaide. Are you still doing your leadership and development consultancy?
Yeah. So herein lies ground zero of turbulence and stress, and I'm trying to build the consultancy here. So I had no client base, and I've still got a lot of work back in person. I'm traveling. My wife Sarah, we just had a young son Flynn. So you're encountering all the new parent anxieties and stresses, and then you're down to one income. And it was a really difficult time if I look back on it, sort of through 2016 to 2017, because I wasn't sure which way it was all going to go. And I say stupidly, and I'd started this PickStar thing.
Did you ever think, I'm going to throw in the towel and just get a job?
Yes. Was it serious? I sort of call it the truck driver index.
Okay.
Every day is different. Some days, 10 out of 10, I just want to be a truck driver and just drive a truck from point A to point B. And
no stress.
No stress, no thinking, just do. And I remember there was a point where I actually went and had a discussion with the old consultancy that I'd worked for to become an employee, because I knew that the demands on the family unit and the lack of money and the stress was not good. And so I probably stared that demon down, but I remember walking away from that going, I just can't do it.
No. I just wanted to ask that because obviously everyone must have that point of do I or don't I? And I think talk about your entrepreneurial spirit, and I think you giving it a go is testament to that, and then pursuing it is a good thing. It's a good attitude.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just not easy. I've said to a few founders in the past who have probably hit that, that juncture where it potentially is too hard, and that's not a bad thing either.
No.
But it actually liberates you to stare down the alternative and going back to work. It was important for me to get to a point where I thought I have to do this. And if I hadn't have then had that meeting and, it almost flushed it out of my system, because up until that point, it was really building, this feeling of I need to give up on this lifestyle and do the right thing financially. Yeah.
So what is intriguing me now is, you're trying to set up the leadership and development consultancy in Adelaide. You've got a little bit of a business idea. You've realized that employment is not the option. So let's start two businesses. When you say it like that, it sounds crazy.
And have a kid.
Yeah. But
change state. Yeah, no. It seems to happen though, doesn't it, with people, is that they batch all these big ticket items into one little period. Yeah, I would never have done it. Knowing what I know now, and that, I guess, that naivety is part of the power of starting a business. Is most founders will look, I never would have started if I knew how hard it was going to be. Yeah. And it was a really bleak, time for me. And my emotional health was really quite dark.
Did you draw on your network in Adelaide, or did you still feel quite isolated?
No, I invested heavily in re-establishing some, connections that weren't strong, but we just sort of knew of each other. Part of what I did when I was on the plane coming back to Adelaide is I was really fearful that I was going to stagnate and shrink, and that I was going to lose that risk appetite in Adelaide. So I just nominated 5 people, and I thought I'm going to connect with these people, whether they know me or not. Some were old friends that I hadn't seen in 10 years. Others were people I didn't really know, but I valued them from the outside.
Yeah.
And I thought I'm just going to connect with these 5 people. And one was Rob Chapman, who ended up investing into my business. One was Andrew Montesi, who ended up becoming like a really important person in the evolution of PickStar and became a full-time employee. Another one was Josh Baker, who's a serial hospitality cafe entrepreneur in Adelaide, a schoolmate, but, you know, really dynamic, interesting person. And we ended up sharing an office with him. So it's amazing how those first connections that I made ended up being really valuable. But I didn't know that. I just wanted to go, you know what? I just want to surround myself with interesting people.
Yeah. That you could learn from. Was there like, did you think did you, like you said, you drew that list up, but did you strategically pick them for your learning and growth?
No, I'm never that structured. It's a lot of instinct. And look, there's probably an underlying element of that, but no, it was never a curated list. Literally, and it's a little bit like year 12. You know, my mum gave me some great advice. She goes, just do what you love in year 12. What subjects should I do? I did drama, I did PE, I did modern history, I did biology. Like, there was no narrative to that.
There was no common thread.
There's no common, you know, and I feel for kids, you know, in year 9, they're being streamed into subjects, and they're, you know, paralyzed by this burden of picking a career. And I think that's why I feel blessed, you know, even in those early stages of school, I look back at that pattern. You know, I had the courage and freedom to pursue sport. Mum just said, well, okay, yeah, we'll make sure you've got a few other alternatives. And then if I look back on it now, I came back from my travel and I'm like, what do I love doing? Let's do something in that space.
Yeah.
Let's do business. Let's start a business. So
where was the turning point? Obviously, you said you've got some retained clients, obviously, from the consultancy, but where was that point where it was like, okay, I'm all in with PickStar?
Yeah. Well, I wish there was a moment, but there was probably there's probably 2 things that happened which symbolize the all-in nature. And the first one was that I employed people.
That's scary.
Yes. So, you know, Nathan, who obviously was really important in the early stages, was great. But then in 2000, towards the end of 2016, I employed 2 people.
Actually, just for our listeners and viewers, because I've read the bios and done researching and everything, what is PickStar?
Good question. Look, where we were then and what we are now has been a real evolution. Where we are now is basically a full stack sports and entertainment agency. What does that mean? Well, we've got technology that we sell to Cricket Australia, to the AFL, to the NRL, to sports leagues and teams. So there's where we develop software. Another part is that we facilitate the connections between brands and talent themselves. So we make a commission on brokering commercial deals. And then the third part is we've recently acquired a talent agency. Okay. So we now actually represent talent.
So when we say talent, that's outside of sport?
Everyone, yeah. Like, you know, Fitzy, Ben and Liam from Nova, you know, Kyle Chalmers we represent, Leighton Hewitt, Alex Carey. So there's sport, there's radio, there's entertainment, there's, you know, but predominantly sport.
Yeah.
There's about 90 talent that we represent. So those 3 pillars all feed into, I guess, what we're doing, which is really impacting this sports and entertainment ecosystem.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, helping a range of clients in that space. So that's where we are now. Where we started was literally just an idea to, you know, connect. In fact, it was fans.
Oh, wow.
Fans and talent. It was like, hey, I want James for my birthday party. I've got $500. That's where we started, which sounds narrow now, doesn't it? It sounds so stupid. But
no, not really.
For me back then, it was like the panacea. It was the, you know, marketplaces were exploding. Uber was coming around, Airtasker, you know, obviously Amazon was killing it. So the idea of using technology to broker deals was strong, but it's been an evolution.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I think a long-winded way. Yeah. So employing people was the first full commitment to I'm in.
Yeah.
But I wasn't paying myself and I was still working my butt off and all the money that I got was going back into the business.
Right.
And that probably wasn't even enough. So I did get to a point where I funded the growth of PickStar with a $68,000 credit card advance.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
cash advance. So I was paying wages off a credit card. It was not good. Terrible way of doing it.
My heart's starting to go like this now.
Yes. Never suggest that. So that was the first phase, was that we were getting some good growth in 2017, but it was not, we were burning money and I was funding it. And so then it wasn't, Matthew Pavlich, my co-founder, and I went and got some funding. And it wasn't until, I think it was June 2018, did I start paying myself, which then became the catalyst to be full-time.
Yeah.
So there was probably a 2-year period where I was in this funding dilemma where I couldn't sustain my wage. That was really difficult.
But were you, even though you weren't paying yourself a wage from the business, were you working in the business?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you were sort of, your leadership and development consulting was sort of like subsidizing your living expenses kind of thing. And then you've got...
And
then funding
and
the business.
Any excess
was funded,
pushed into the business also, and even that wasn't enough, hence why the credit card debt eventuated, because I think, look, I would never do it again that way.
No. So can I ask, when you went for the did you go for venture funding?
Mm-hmm.
Was that because it was the technical platform that was the uniqueness of it?
Yes, and the model, whilst a bit different now, is still relatively the same. You have a piece of technology that gives you scale, and you've got an addressable market, which, if the model and the formulas stack up, it means that you're going to generate market share, you're going to acquire customers, and for a period of time, you will burn capital in gaining that market footprint. And then such time as when you're big enough, you begin to generate profits and you are in a very lucrative position. So hence why we went for, funding round, was because we saw we've got a piece of technology. Well, we didn't even have the tech, but we want to build the tech. We've got an idea. We've got a market. And, there's some sexiness about sport that I think is easier for those.
And that would have been quite unique in the market. There wasn't anything else that was around at that time with that kind of matching and using that tech.
No. No, not at all. And to this day, we're the largest marketplace in Australia. It's a difficult space to dominate, but once you do, it becomes a real asset then for other opportunities.
So really, it's sort of been like the last 6 years that's been that evolution.
Yeah. I personally, I think I always had this 4-year pattern. And I didn't realize that until I'd been in PickStar for 4 years. So, 21 roughly. And I started to just, what I realized, that I had 4 years at St Kilda, 3.5 years at the Crows, 4 years at Fremantle. I did my consulting for 4 years before PickStar started.
So you get a 4-year itch, not a 7-year itch.
Yeah, but what's that about? And I asked myself that question. I'm like, I've got enough data points now to suggest what goes on for me, because all those opportunities are amazing and I didn't necessarily need to leave. So and this goes to probably the most fundamental thing that I've learned in my journey, is that my personal journey and my business journey are parallel stories that are unlocked by each other.
Okay.
So typically what happens is that the business can grow, and then you are limited by your own beliefs and you're limited by your own issues. And you then unlock your own issues about certain things, and you've got that personal enlightenment and development. And it's really hard. And then all of a sudden you leapfrog your business capacity and capability. And then all of a sudden your business will lurch forward.
Yeah.
And then it shines a spotlight again on all your deficiencies and all your weaknesses and all the things that, you don't feel good about. So I guess I really reflected. I said, why do I run away from things after four years? And I think it was ultimately about, my own sense of what I expect. And if the reality doesn't meet those lofty expectations,
so that's like your limited beliefs.
Yeah. I'm like, well, this has failed. I'm not Facebook yet. I'm not, and okay. So I guess to round out the story is on the sort of the near side of the 4 years, all the growth, all the success, all the power of the PickStar story is from the 4-year mark onwards.
Right.
So it's been an incredible case study for myself about what it feels like to ignore those instincts and self-sabotage things, and what can be on the other side of that is amazing. But the journey hasn't stopped me. I'm in the middle of a moment right now where I'm fearful about the future.
Well, it sounds like, so you've acquired a talent agency. So when did that happen?
June last year, 2023.
So quite recent.
Yep.
And then so you've got the talent agency at PickStar. And what was the software that you're doing with?
So Works. Yeah. So we basically build workflow management software for talent deliverables. So, a good example might be Telstra sponsors the AFL.
Yeah.
The AFL's job is to deliver about 2,000 activations on behalf of Telstra, whether that's social media posts with players and Telstra, or attending a Telstra store, or doing a clinic. And so our software is used to facilitate that and report back to Telstra what's been achieved. And
great stuff.
Yeah. So, that we developed it, like it doesn't exist anywhere. But the reason we're at another inflection point is because, there is an opportunity to grow this business aggressively now that we're based on where we are over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And so, we're on the brink of signing off on some institutional capital. So as opposed to high net worth capital, which is a bit more emotive and forgiving, institutional capital is deployment of funds, turn on that investment, IRR. They don't suffer fools. And so there's the next path for us. But, through some acquisitions and some more growth, we've got a very cool opportunity to do something impactful.
And I'm only going to talk about PickStar a second here, because it sounds like it's good. And we'll go on to the potential blowing up, which sounds exciting. Do you feel that your personal story of coming out of the football system was a catalyst for the formation of PickStar, or did you just see the gap in the market?
Great question. My instincts are that I had an innate sense to build. I have an innate sense of wanting to build something. I looked around a little bit like my network. I go, well, where do I build something? I'll go to my comfort zone and I'll go to my strength, i.e. I'll build something in football. Okay, what's the problem that I want to solve in football? And that probably was the essence of how the first concept was born. I'd like to go, I just saw an opportunity and I solved it. But if you look deeper at the more, personal motivations, I think it's about building and wanting to be proud of something that I've created. And the natural starting place was football.
And you're on the next part of your still building.
Still building.
Yes. So what's it going to look like in, and I'm going to be awkward and say 5 years, because we're going to get past the 4 years.
I was going to say yes, I know. Yeah, look, great. Another great question. It's funny because we're in strategy at the moment. So I'm thinking 3 months, maybe 3 years. The 5 years is a great stretch for my brain. Look, my hopes are that we're a global sort of technology enabled agency.
Are you global now?
We've got some global clients.
Yep.
We don't have boots on the ground
in other countries,
jurisdictions. The possibility is very real, but I would love to have built, a business that turns over more than 100 million, where I am adding value, but I'm not. In fact, I'm not equipped to lead a business that size. So at a certain point in the journey, my limitations absolutely will tap me out.
Yeah.
And I can look back and go, I built that. That's me. And the business is innovative, creative, and is solving problems in that sports and entertainment ecosystem.
Yeah. And what size is your team now?
So we're about 25, 26 at the moment. That could get a lot bigger very quickly. Like I think we've got a few possible acquisitions on the table at the moment. But that in itself is a crazy path forward, because you're pitching the vision, you're pitching something that doesn't exist, and then you have to execute and bring the reality of the offices and the people and the numbers and the revenue and
And the due diligence of that, is it the right fit?
Correct.
That's massive.
We're in due diligence at the moment, and it's an area that I don't appreciate.
Yeah.
I don't like
So
it.
it sounds like you definitely like to juggle,
Yes.
because there seems to be. So if people want to know more about PickStar and James, how do they find out a little bit about you?
Oh gosh, I haven't thought about. LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. I've website. The PickStar website's got some details and some background, along with my LinkedIn.
Fantastic.
Thank you. And
thank you so much.
great questions.
Oh, no worries.
It is an elite skill to be good at questioning. It is. It's something I think is underappreciated.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Glass Ceiling. If you've liked what you heard, please subscribe, as we'd love to have you as part of our community. We're grateful to our guests for sharing their inspiring stories and insights with us. This podcast was brought to you by Wavebreaker. Join us next time as we shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time.